I can assure you all we're taking a very hands-on approach to this case. We don't have any suspects at the moment, but we're looking to apprehend someone soon. The person who's going to review this film in the meantime will be us until we find the actual suspect. Bear with us. We'll get through it together. A partner of mine once told me it's all about the little things. Little things, that's how you review the film. Look for those. That's how you get caught.
It's the little things, Jimmy. It's the little things that rip you apart. It's the little things that get you caught.
So we have the little things. So yeah, theaters overall are still pretty much shut down, but there's a few that are open here and there left over. We're playing it safe. We're putting on our masks and being all socially distanced, and we just can't help it because the film industry has not stopped, surprisingly. A lot of it's going to streaming services, and admittedly this one too. Different contract deals with HBO Max have been doing these back-to-back, what should be, spring and summer blockbuster releases are going to end up just being regular releases with a very limited run in theaters and HBO Max in partnership instead. Now there's big titles like Quiet Place Part 2 and No Time to Die that have just been pushed back further in the year wisely, so hopefully when theaters are back and booming, it'll all time itself out. We decided we wanted to go ahead and check this out because we saw the trailers and it's got a triple threat. I don't want to say a well-known director, but the work the director has done is well-known. The Little Things, which came out this year, 2021. If you don't know, it's directed by John Lee Hancock, an unfamiliar name by most standards in terms of, your typical known directors, popular directors, not as well-known. But this guy has done, the most notably, I would say, would be The Blind Side. Also done Saving Mr. Banks a little further back. I'd say the most recent one he's done before this was the Netflix original, The Highwaymen, which at some point I'm gonna watch. Probably do a cinema chat commentary for it, but this is his newest endeavor. His films usually are kind of more lighthearted, optimistic pieces, so to see something like this kind of come along, it's interesting to see him kind of delve more into something that's much darker. But let's just jump right into it, right? So the film as a whole, it's some pretty dark stuff. It takes place in the 90s, right after all these other serial killings, all these famous ones have gone down. You've heard the greatest hits. We have Ted Bundy, we have the Night Stalker, a new guy who's committing atrocities and crimes, whether it's of a sexual nature, murder, anything like that. So we have our main cast. We have Denzel Washington. We have, I don't want to say his name wrong, Mr. Malik. I think it's Rami Malik, I believe. And then we have Jared Leto, who is an actor. Denzel's basically this not retired sheriff's deputy, but he used to be a detective, and now he's just a sheriff's deputy who he sees these cases that are coming up, and Rami is basically the guy who is the detective that Denzel used to be, and Denzel, they get to interacting and trying to solve this crime together, and then it seems as if Jared Leto's character may very well be the man who has perpetrated these heinous acts, or at the very least, a creepy man who could definitely be capable of perpetrating these dangerous acts. They all do a great job. The cast in this movie, whether it's that main trio or most of the rest of the gallery of people that are in this film, everybody does great. It's honestly where a lot of this movie shines for me, are the performances, because they're great actors. I, in particular, love, not to put down Denzel's work, but I do love me some Rami Malek and anything he's in. Jawline could cut through glass, and the piercing eyes, and the overall, he's a very handsome man. I'll leave it at that, but I'm very excited to always see whatever work he does. The film overall is well constructed. I have no complaints. It's shot well. When I say it's well lit, a lot of the film is very dark, both in subject matter and also visually on screen. But for all the dark shots that take place in the film, nothing's ever drowned in shadow and darkness, unless it's supposed to be, which is intentional and different. But lighting is done very well. A lot of this film has close-ups, either chest up, medium shots, or close-up on people's faces, giving this film a very much intimate and personal feel, which this film is for these characters. these crimes that are going on, these detectives, they take it very personally. This film is very much in that vein of like True Detective or borderline even noir in a way, which is just, it becomes almost less about the murders and the case themselves as the people that, as Denzel's character says, kind of take on the role of these angels that are trying to avenge the fallen and are trying to stop more people from dying. And when you're a detective working these cases, it can consume you and become like that is your life. It's that obsession that drives people as well, which can be very dangerous and not good for your mental health. So to have this film shot in that way, it gave me a sense not of claustrophobia but of like an intimate nature, as in that's the whole tone what the film's trying to convey. Granted, the whole film isn't just people's faces, but if you look for it or have an eye for it, someone who's I critique films and I've known films for a while, it's noticeable. That's all I'm going to say. Great tension in this movie. Some might construe some of the scenes of tension with like the movie takes its time, which I'll get to that in a second. But for the scenes and moments where there's supposed to be tension, whether it's a dramatic build-up or just, contextually from what's going on in that particular scene, the movie does a great job of instilling tension and just that feeling in your gut where you're like, oh shit, is it going down? Like you don't really, it really just like hooks you in certain spots throughout. At least that's the way I felt, is that this film just had the whole film was pretty just tension filled, but it definitely did a good job of kind of holding on to that in key moments throughout, even the beginning, like the cold open, like great stuff. Where I would start to say the film falters for me, film's pacing could probably do with a little bit of work, and just as in some scenes drag on a little bit longer than they probably could, and don't think this film is some big exciting shootout crime-filled chasing killers through backyards and all this. This movie, for all intents and purposes, it's like a crime drama, borderline thriller, but it is one of those films where you'd hear this term, slow burn. This film is definitely a slow burn in that sense. I know I mentioned tension earlier, and that still exists, but there are many scenes where it's like just taking its time and showing you what's going on. You're really just my mother even, I think, put it fairly well in a way, but she said it's like watching an episode of Law and Order, or in this case like True Detective or something. You're watching this case just progress, pan out, they get a lead, they follow it. It doesn't play out in real time, of course, but it feels like you're really in the investigation with our main characters here, and you're following along, and you're wondering like, well, shit, that leads a bust, what do we do now? I didn't mind it. I never at one point in this film felt bored, but your average moviegoer might start to be like, checking their clock or, messaging back their friend on their phone or something. Here's where things get a little bit crazy for me. In a way, the film doesn't, and if you hate any vague spoilers, I'm not going to really spoil the movie, but I'm going to say the ending kind of doesn't really give you, what ends up happening ends up leaving you with a feeling of vagueness. I'm not going to say if the case is solved, and I'm not going to say if the killer is found or not, who it is. I'm just going to say it leaves you with like this kind of sense of vagueness, and you still feel, even after all the events of the film, you can feel a little bit incomplete. Now, I had my own big crackpot theory about what truly happened and who the killer is and all this, but after reading some reviews online and talking to my friends more about it and looking more into it, I was big braining it too much, and I was putting more meaning and assigning more meaning than there was, which is unfortunate, because I think if the film had taken the angle that I had thought in my conspiracy theory head, I think it would have made for a much more interesting angle, and almost given this film a Shutter Island-esque quality to it, where I felt the compulsion to rewatch and like reanalyze these scenes for the characters and how they behave. Now, I still, back in my mind, I'm like, you know what? I still want to believe that my crazy crackpot theory is correct, and I'll leave it at that. But I will say that even finding out that I might be wrong about my theory and what happened, it's been a minute since I sat down and watched a movie that made me rethink the events of the movie and what I just watched and the characters and their motivations and who actually is who they say they are. It's been a minute since a film has really made me question all that and want to make me rewatch. So props to this movie, even if it was kind of on a foundation of sand. I like it for doing that. And honestly, that's all there is to say about the film. I'll just get right down to it. I found out critics really didn't like this movie. People kind of called it textbook and average, and kind of painfully so. But I didn't find this to be an average film. I actually really enjoyed myself in this film. It's one that I'll probably buy and watch again. As I said, the performances shine through. I was engaged. I was curious to see how the investigation would go. I was borderline edge of my seat, but more just that knot of like tension in my gut, wondering like how these scenes were going to play out. And I really enjoyed the film, so much so to the point where I give The Little Things a very solid 4 out of 5. Now, I might change that rating in the future. Who's to say? But that was my gut instinct walking out of the theater. And even as I sat on it and marinated on how I felt, read other reviews, and understood where other people were coming from, I didn't want all those reviews to kind of taint my experience. And my gut experience was this was a really great film. There are definitely some things holding it back. I would say this, if anything, I would say this is a low 4 for sure. But the more that I dig, I can't really find too many issues. I liked what I saw. I enjoyed the film. I would definitely show it to other friends. It's not probably going to win any big awards, but I got my own personal enjoyment out of it. And I just, as in terms of a detective like mystery drama of this kind of caliber, I thought it was done pretty well. So yeah, that's all there is to it. I don't know if I would say it's worth going to see in theaters. I mean, if you're like a film buff like me, then I would say go for it. Otherwise, it's definitely worth a watch on HBO Max. If you have HBO Max, I would say go for it. Go ahead and watch it, either by yourself or with, your loved one or your friends or whatever. But it's definitely worth a watch, at the very least, to see it and kind of, come away and see what you think by the end of it. So yeah, that's all there is to it. Gonna hopefully keep doing more movie reviews. I don't know if I'll be able to do one a week or if it's gonna be one every 2 weeks. I'm gonna keep trying to see films. I've just kind of been sticking to the pattern of seeing whatever movies I actually like, of reviewing movies that I see in theaters. So I'll probably stick to that format. And yeah, that about does it. Thank you guys and gals so much for watching, all the support as always, and stay tuned for the next movie review that I do. And of course, as always, feel free to leave comments below with either, disagreeing with me, agreeing with me, or preferably suggestions for films that you want me to review, whether it's a film, television series, whatever. Mom, this is your chance. If there's ever any movies you want to shove down my throat, then by all means go for it, and I'm sure I'll get around to watching it and reviewing it eventually. So thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next. And goodbye, travelers.